The ego often operates in the shadows of our consciousness, quietly influencing our thoughts and actions. It's like a phantom that can't be seen, heard, or touched, but it is very much there, lurking in the background. In fact, you can even say that the ego has a certain energy to it. We can't see, hear, or touch energy, but we obviously know that it exists. We know that the entire world and universe, including ourselves, are made up of energy. And the more we unconsciously identify with the ego, the more we are picking up its energy. This energy or vibration manifests in many different ways. It could be a lack of confidence or self-esteem. It could be a general irritation or annoyance with others. Or it could be a feeling of pride, superiority, and invincibility. The ego is a master at emitting these so-called negative energies. And when we are unconscious of what's really happening, we get sucked into the ego's gravitational pull. In fact, you can almost liken the ego to a black hole. It's not something that has inherent properties of its own, at least in the traditional sense, but you definitely know it's there. And it has the capability to suck every single thing around it. It can suck our peace, happiness, and ability to live a meaningful life. Black holes remain one of the most mysterious and fascinating objects in the universe, but inside all of us, there is also a black hole. There is an invisible force trying to destroy our hopes of ever escaping. The good news, though, is that there is a difference between our egoic black hole and the black holes in outer space. The difference is that we can escape the black hole of our ego, even though nothing can theoretically escape an actual black hole. Scientists say that not even light can escape a physical black hole, but the light of our soul or true self can escape the egoic black hole. And it all starts with becoming more aware of the ego and how exactly it tries to pull us into its sphere of influence. This is what we will be covering today in this video, which is part 3 of the 7-part video series, Awakening Beyond Ego. If you haven't seen the first 2 parts yet, then I highly recommend you start by watching those first before actually diving into this video. However, if you have already seen those 2 videos and feel like you've grasped the content, then let's go ahead and jump right in. In this video, we will embark on a journey of self-awareness. We will start by highlighting the importance of self-awareness, and then we will dive into exploring some practical methods to help us recognize the ego's subtle manipulations, or as we can call it, its gravitational pull. I can't say this enough. Self-awareness is a critical and foundational step toward our spiritual growth. Without it, we simply cannot progress on the journey or have any hope of freeing ourselves from the ego. Self-awareness helps us understand our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors more deeply. It actually leads to more conscious decision-making and an overall better alignment with our soul, which is what we covered in part 2 of this series. the most powerful practices for cultivating self-awareness and inner observation are, of course, meditation, mindfulness, and introspection. And while they are all related to each other to some degree, each practice provides a unique approach to help us become more aware of our egoic patterns, and we'll now spend a moment going over each of them. Meditation, as most of us know, is a mental practice that helps us achieve a deep state of concentration and relaxation. As we sit or stand in meditation, we create space to observe our thoughts without judgment or attachment. And I say sit or stand because there really is no right or wrong way to meditation, despite what some people say. The whole point is to be, rather than to simply do. If you're more focused on the doing, then perhaps you're missing the point. But regardless of how it is actually practiced, meditation can help us become aware of the ego's endless chatter and recognize our attachment to the thoughts, beliefs, and identities it produces. Through meditation, we develop an awareness that we are actually a witness to life, not the doer of life. To paraphrase the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, you are doing nothing, and yet nothing is left undone. Or as the renowned Indian sage and spiritual teacher Ramana Maharshi used to say, he who is the doer is also the sufferer. If you take the time to reflect on these quotes, then you will start to appreciate the true wisdom they have to offer. As both sages beautifully conveyed, if you think you are the one doing everything, you will also be the one who is suffering from everything. Rather than being a doer of everything, you are simply a witness to all of creation. The more you identify yourself as the doer, the more you hold on to your fictitious stories, identities, and beliefs. And this is exactly where suffering is born. For example, if you are battling with cancer, it's not the cancer that is harming you so much as it is your own thoughts. You might feel sad, bitter, and hopeless, and these thoughts are far more destructive than any single thing cancer can do to you. And the more you are unaware of these thoughts, the more you begin to identify with them, the more you begin to accept them. You start to label yourself as a cancer victim, which the ego will always remind you of. You might create a story and a history of how your life was before cancer, the journey since, and how much you are currently suffering from it. And apart from all the self-pity, there may even be a little bit of anger and resentment. And you might ask yourself, how could God do this to me? Or why me of all people? And even though you are not the cancer yourself, the ego is using it as an instrument to make you even more unconscious. But the important thing to remember here is that cancer is not happening to you. It's happening to the body. Cancer is not the essence of who you are. Of course, it may weaken your body, which we all know will eventually turn into another form of energy someday. But it can never weaken the living consciousness or presence that you truly are. If you remember this, then it doesn't matter if your body is experiencing cancer or any other mental or physical ailment, because you have transcended your body. You no longer identify yourself as just this mind and body. Now, I will say this is truly a very liberating experience, and one that can only come from becoming more aware of our egoic tendencies. When we realize that we are not the doer or victim, but rather the witness to this whole drama of life, we gain insight into the nature of our egoic mind and how it creates these destructive thought patterns. Over time, this heightened awareness enables us to detach from egoic identifications and weakens the ego's grip on our thoughts and actions. In other words, through enough self-awareness, we no longer identify ourselves as the cancer victim, as the cancer survivor. We no longer even identify with the word cancer. We recognize that we are simply pure consciousness, which no disease or label can ever diminish. This awareness can come through meditation, but it can also come through other practices as well. Closely related to meditation is the practice of mindfulness, which involves giving your full attention to the present moment without any judgment whatsoever. Mindfulness is about being fully aware of all our thoughts, feelings, sensations, and even the environment without trying to change or interpret them. It's about accepting things as they are rather than how we would like them to be. For example, if you have a negative or uncomfortable thought that enters your mind, mindfulness trains you to not resist the thought, but rather observe it. You are not even your thoughts to begin with. So why are you so stressed that a negative thought has entered your mind? It will come and go as long as you don't attach yourself to it. And for that matter, as long as you don't attach yourself to any thought. And this approach helps us develop a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world, not just the understanding we get through the distorted lens of the ego. Through mindfulness, we can observe our thoughts and emotions objectively. We can recognize egoic patterns, such as recurring negative thoughts, emotional reactions, or defensive behaviors. And by not reacting to all of these patterns, which I admit is sometimes the hardest part, we gain the ability to break free from our habitual egoic responses and instead make conscious choices that are aligned with our true selves. Let's say, for example, that you are struggling to find love in your life. You just keep trying and trying, but no matter what, you always come up short. Now, this can be down to a couple of things. Either you don't have the confidence or sense of security in that moment, or you get rejected even when you have those things. But the actual details of why you haven't found love are not that important in this situation. What's really important is what goes on in your head every single time you don't succeed. Are these setbacks affecting your self-perception or self-esteem in a negative way? Are you beginning to doubt your uniqueness as a person, or losing hope that you will ever find love? You see, most, if not all of us, have probably felt this way at some point or another in our lives. It's completely normal, and if you haven't experienced it yet, chances are you will. But what is not normal is letting those thoughts continue to influence and control you day after day after day. You see, we all suffer from setbacks, but not all of us suffer from the paralyzing thoughts that come after such setbacks, at least not to the same degree. Some of us will feel sad initially, but then eventually we will get over it and we will move on to the next person. However, many of us will just simply dwell on that rejection or failure for weeks, months, or even years. In fact, I've seen people in my own life who still haven't let go of the person they are trying to pursue, even though that other person has long moved on and are living their best life. This is nothing more than being lost in the ego's endless web of thoughts. If these people could just become a little bit more aware of their thoughts and notice them without identification and attachment, then they would get over that other person in a heartbeat. But sadly, that is rarely the case. Those people will unfortunately just continue suffering from the thoughts that they are attaching themselves to. And this is an important point here. Even though your thoughts are not actually yours and merely pass through you, when you accept them as your own, or worse, accept them as your true identity, you actually become responsible for your own suffering. So even though some people might say, I just can't stop thinking about him, or I just can't stop thinking about her, the truth is you can never stop thinking because you are not in control of thoughts in the first place. It's kind of like the equivalent of saying that I want to stop my heart from beating, or I want to stop my lungs from breathing. It just simply is not possible, and it sounds kind of funny when you say it out loud. Thoughts happen whether you know it or not, without your involvement. But the key is whether or not you are actually holding on to each of these thoughts. That is where our pain and suffering come from. So when people say, I just want to stop thinking about that person, or I want to get rid of all of my thoughts and memories of that person, what they are really trying to say is, I want to stop being attached to thoughts and memories of that person. And that is a distinction that many of us sadly don't realize, at least not for a long time. The bottom line here is that if you are not aware of the ego's games, you will get sucked into its black hole of pain, misery, and low self-esteem. This will just produce one negative thought after another, which you try to resist because you find the whole experience to be painful. But here's the thing, resisting these thoughts is what is creating the pain in the first place. And the pain only grows stronger the more you attach yourself to these thoughts. If you try to think of other thoughts to distract yourself from the so-called painful or negative thoughts, then you really haven't addressed the core issue, which is not observing the ego. All you have done is simply put a bandage over the problem. But the ego will keep bringing these negative thoughts in your mind until you actually stop identifying with them. It will keep reminding us that we are not good enough to have a romantic partner, or to be in love, or to be happy, unless we have the person that we are attached to, or in this case, the thought that we are attached to. And so in this instance, mindfulness will go a long way in helping us first recognize these thought patterns, but then secondly and importantly, detaching ourselves from them. Once we see these thoughts for what they truly are, which are simply passing thoughts, we will no longer become attached to them. And as this attachment begins to weaken on its own, the thought pattern itself will also weaken, until eventually it has little to no effect on you anymore. This all comes through the practice of mindfulness. Finally, there is the art of introspection, which is a deep exploration of our inner self to better understand our motivations, desires, and patterns of thinking and feeling. Now, I'll be honest, introspection is one of my favorite spiritual activities because it helps me dive deep into my being to understand all the underlying beliefs and conditioning that drive my own egoic patterns. One common technique in introspection is constantly asking yourself the question, why? And the reason we would do such questioning is because our initial perceptions and reactions may not always reveal the entire truth behind our thoughts and behaviors. For example, if you don't like swimming at the beach, ask yourself why. After some introspection, you may discover that you don't like swimming at the beach because it means that you will have to swim in front of others. But that's not the real cause. If you ask yourself why again, you may dig deeper and find that you don't like swimming in front of others because you nearly drowned in the ocean one time, and you felt absolutely embarrassed by every single person staring at you when the lifeguard pulled you out. Now, you may think this is the real reason and stop all your questioning and introspection altogether, but sometimes going just one more step further can reveal the full and entire truth. In this example, if you ask yourself why again, you might come to the root cause of the issue and discover that you don't like swimming at the beach because you ultimately want to be loved and accepted by others. You might learn that what has prevented you from swimming in the beach all these years is this underlying fear and limiting belief that somehow swimming will put you back into a position where you might embarrass yourself again. In other words, you associate swimming at the beach with not being accepted and loved by others. And quite honestly, that is a very sad but very real life example of what happens when we make these associations. Just that one thought and belief prevents you from not only experiencing a very nice joy in life, which is the joy of being in the ocean, but it also might create and trigger other fears and limiting beliefs, which can greatly impact your quality of life. So you see how powerful introspection can be. It can quite literally uncover all those deep thought patterns that influence why you think and behave the way you do. And in most cases, this awareness is so powerful that nothing further is actually needed. In other words, the fear will just disappear right away, and you will get to jump back into the ocean again, as if nothing ever happened. But even if it doesn't resolve itself immediately, at least you now have the awareness to overcome that fear, which honestly is half the battle itself. Without awareness, you have no choice of transcending the ego and reclaiming your life. While introspection may seem uncomfortable or unnatural at first, because you're literally asking yourself questions, it can work wonders in helping us understand our preconditioned thoughts and behaviors. In fact, this is a tool that I would often use and incorporate during my coaching days to help my clients understand and overcome their limiting beliefs. And if you yourself are finding it hard to practice this on your own, then I definitely recommend seeking out a competent coach who can help you dive deep into your being and shed some light onto your inner world, the role that is often forgotten and misunderstood. By getting asked or asking ourselves probing questions and being open to the whole process of inner exploration, we can uncover hidden aspects of the ego and identify the root causes of our behaviors and thought patterns. So, in summary, meditation, mindfulness, and introspection can all help us cultivate greater self-awareness, develop a deeper understanding of our egoic tendencies, and ultimately transcend the ego's influence. If you're not already doing any of these practices, then see if you can slowly start to incorporate them into your spiritual routine. It doesn't have to be 2 or 3 hours a day. It really doesn't take that much time at all. Even just 10 or 15 minutes a day, if done consistently, can help you become more aware of the ego. For me personally, I love being able to get up early in the morning and practice mindfulness or meditation in some way or form. Then I'll usually go out into the backyard, take in the nature around me, and ask deep, probing questions that will help me recognize the ego and ultimately connect with my true self. As Eckhart Tolle said, when you observe the ego in yourself, you are beginning to go beyond it. It's all about developing this awareness, one step at a time. It's all about recognizing that we are consciousness itself, not all these individual personas and stories that the ego convinces us to be. Or to paraphrase another analogy by Eckhart, we are not the painting on the canvas, but the entire canvas itself. Understanding this is a truly liberating moment in our spiritual journey, but I have to remind you that it's not always going to be easy and smooth. There will definitely be significant challenges along the way, and ironically, the journey becomes more and more challenging the further you actually go. That's because the ego recognizes that you are trying to overcome it. You are trying to break free from its control. If you're already unconscious of the ego, then it doesn't have to put up much resistance because you are already under its control. You are asleep and unconscious. However, when you slowly start to recognize the ego and begin to dissociate yourself from it, then the ego will go into overdrive to try to pull you back into its black hole. You will be tested time and time again and will inevitably stumble and fall many times throughout the journey. But as long as you keep getting back up and you continue the journey, you will eventually escape the ego's black hole and experience true freedom. So don't get discouraged when these challenging moments do occur. And remember, we all go through these challenges. in order to liberate ourselves from the ego, in order to ultimately awaken. But now that we've discussed this, let's go ahead and prepare ourselves for the next video in this series, which is part 4, the ego's illusions and manifestations. In this current video, we covered a few examples of how the ego exactly manifests in our lives. But in part 4, we'll go even deeper to understand the ego's illusions and manifestations, with the ultimate goal of gaining mastery over them. So I just want to thank you for carving out some time from your busy schedule to watch this video. I know the ego was probably telling you didn't have enough time, but it turns out you did. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you learned something helpful from it that can help you on your own spiritual journey. Remember, there is not only this video series that can help you liberate yourself from the ego. Virtually every single one of the videos on my channel are meant in some way or another to help us awaken, to help us become more aware of who we truly are, so that we can step into this light and live in perfect and harmonious alignment with it. If this piques your interest, then I encourage you to please hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so that you can receive all the latest videos when they come out. And remember, this is not a one-way street. I certainly love hearing and look forward to all of your comments and questions, and quite honestly, so does the rest of our community. When you post a comment or you share a question or you share an insight, everyone gets the benefit from it. We can all learn and grow from one another by being more involved with the videos, sharing them with our friends and family who might be in need of them, and ultimately helping others who are seeking help. In fact, this is an important point. As you become more aware of the ego, share this insight and wisdom with others, and you will see your peace and joy multiply as you watch your own awakening inspire others on their path. But for now, thank you again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon on another one of these videos.